couldn't have run any worse. So we started with 30 players. We're down to 14. I have a good stack. And in this hand, I have 27,500. Blinds are at 1,000, 2,000. Now, these are very, very fast structured tournaments because we have to end them in like 4.5, 5 hours. So having 13 big blinds or 14 big blinds was actually probably in the top half of the field. So I had a decent stack. So we are 7-handed. I'm on the button. I get pocket aces. It folds around to me. I want to make a raise where I get either the smaller big blind or both to come in. So I just mid-raise to 4,000. The small blind Gala calls. The big blind Lou folds. And the flop comes 10-8 deuce. Gala shoves all in. And of course I snap call. The turn is another 10. The river's a jack. And she flips over ace 10. Absolutely 100% dominated. And a 2-outer and lose. So on this next hand, I had worked my way back and I actually had a good stack. I had 40,000. And now we're only at 10 players. And we go to the final table at 9 players. So there's 5 at each table. And I'm playing against a good player, Josh. I have ace 10 of spades. We're only 5-handed. I decided I would limp in with ace 10 of spades, and the next player folded. Then Josh was on the button. He raised to 10,000. Both of the blinds folded, and I made the call. The flop was 7, 8, 10. I checked. Josh bet 10,000. And I shoved all in. He thought about it for a while, and he eventually made the call. I don't blame him. He already had 20,000 of his 32,000 in, so not a bad call. So, but I had him absolutely dominate again. I had ace 10. Josh had ace 8. And wouldn't you know it, the turn, another 2-outer, and the turn is another 8. The river was a 6, and it was irrelevant. So I lost a second 2-outer. So Gala and Josh, I was not mad at you guys. I was just frustrated at the situation. So I huffed and gruffed and whined and moaned and pouted. And it had nothing to do with you guys. It had everything to be with being disappointed that I got 2-outered the first time. And then literally within 10 minutes got 2-outered again. I was not very happy. So the only good thing about the tournament was the fact that I play in a last man with 3 of my best buddies there, Matt, Dane, and Steve, and I won the last man. Gotcha, boys. They win it more than I do, so. But anyhow, it was nice that at least I got my last man money back from those guys. So I went to the cash table. We play 1-2 Holdem with 1 hand of Omaha per round. So I went to the cash table. I think I bought it for 3. I was doing really well. I got it up to 650, not very long. And then I lost 2 brutal hands. So anyhow, I'm down to like 285, and then I played this hand. We're playing Omaha high only. I get dealt queen, 7-8, double suited. Not a great hand. But I think I had made up my mind that I'm just going to win this hand. Sometimes you do that. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes not so much. So a couple players limped in. I made it 25 from, I think, the cutoff. Normally in our Omaha games, it gets seen for $2 or $5. So a raise represents a really big hand, aces or kings, and that's what I was trying to represent, even though I had queens. Anyhow, there was 6 of us that saw the flop, so there ended up being about 165 in the pot, and the flop came king, jack, deuce. I checked it. Part of my strategy is the guys I play with know that if I flop a big hand, a lot of times I'll check it and then bet on the turn. So it got checked all the way around. So the turn was the 7 of clubs, and I bet out 65. The player to my left, Matt, very good player, he calls, and the player on the button, player on the big blind who had checked, Carlos, he calls. Again, my plan here was just, I'm going to represent a big hand. There's very, very few cards. I'm not just going to rip it in there, but a paired board, I'm absolutely ripping it in there, and I'm going to represent pocket kings, because that's exactly how I would play pocket kings, and these guys know it. So the board matches on the river. It's the last 7. I bet my whole stack, 185 I believe I had left, and the guy to my left, Matt, man, he thinks long and hard and long and hard and long and hard, and eventually he folds. Carlos then, he just thinks long and hard, and he starts talking and speaking, how can I lay this down, and he eventually says to me, all right, are you going to show me your pocket kings? And I don't like to answer those questions, because no matter what you answer, it seems wrong. So I hemmed and hawed, and I eventually said, look, I'm going to show you what I have. He folded pocket jacks face up, and I showed him the bluff that I only had pocket queens, and I won that big hand. Carlos got a lot of flack for folding a full house with the pocket jacks, but he read exactly what I was trying to represent. I actually told him I don't think it was a horrible fold. I know other people did, but if he calls there, and I actually have what I'm representing, pocket kings, he's going to be mad at himself that he folded when he knew he had a losing hand. It just happened to be that this is a hand I was bluffing on, but it absolutely could have easily been pocket kings. The reason Matt on my left thought about it is because he had a king. He also had pocket aces. He said he couldn't call because I could have easily had a set of jacks or something like that. He said he was mad at himself that he didn't re-raise pre-flop when I went to 25, that he didn't rip it in there with a pot-sized bet also, which is probably correct. Anyhow, very interesting hand. Hi guys, Friday, February 9th. I'm on my way up to WinStar. It's about 1:30. They're doing $500 splash pots every 30 minutes to celebrate the opening of their poker room. So there's 46 tables running right now, and the Bravo app says there's nearly 300 people on the 1-2 list, 300 people on the 1-3 list. I'm going to be playing 5-10, so there's only 12 people on that list, so hopefully I'll get a seat soon, but wow, it's going to be absolutely packed. All right, the first interesting hand I played at 5-10. I was under the gun +1 with pocket eights. Under the gun limps for 10. I make the call. Goes around to the small blind, who's the big stack, and he makes it 50. Big blind folds, small blind folds, and I make the call. So the flop is 6 spades, 5 of diamonds, queen of hearts. The big stack leads out for 80. I got too good a hand to quit yet, so I'm going to give it a shot, and I make the call. The turn is the 8 of hearts, pretty nice card. He checks. I bet 125, hoping he actually has a queen or aces or kings, but he folds, and I take down the hand. The next interesting hand, I have pocket queens, under the gun, +1 again. The under the gun player makes it 20. I raise to 65. Everybody else folds back to the original raiser, who calls. The flop comes Jack 9-3. He checks to me. I bet 80, and he makes the call. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. He checks to me. I bet 125, and he folds, and I take down the pot. So in the next hand, I have king of hearts, jack of clubs on the button. It checks all the way around to me. I make it 35. The really big stack is in the small blind, and he makes the call, and the big blind folds. The flop comes jack 9 deuce. He checks to me. I bet 40, and he makes the call. The turn is the 7 of diamonds, and he checks to me again. I bet 65, and he makes the call again. So the river's not a great card. It's the 10 of diamonds. Diamonds gets there backdoor. Straights get there if he has an 8. And he leads into me for 100. He's a good player. He could definitely be bluffing diamonds or the straight. So I decide to be a payoff wizard and pay off. And he shows King Queen for the big straight. Okay, on this next hand I have about 1,470. I've been playing for maybe 3 or 4 hours, just not winning, not losing, just staying even. I have King of Spades, 7 of Hearts in the small blind, and we get lots of limpers in this pot. It ends up being 6 of us at $10 each, so 6 see the flop. This hand is being played against Adriel Bowles. He's a professor at University of North Texas. He's definitely a math guy. He taught at Big Slick Academy for a while. He's a good player. So anyhow, the flop comes 7 of spades, King of clubs, 8 of hearts. I check, big blind checks. Adriel leads out for 40, folds around to the button, who calls the 40, back to me. I make it 140 with top and bottom pair. Big blind folds. Adriel calls, and the button folds. The turn is the 9 of hearts. I bet 275. Adriel raises to 650. Ugh. So I'm hemming and hawing and speeching and talking and figuring out, you know, top and bottom pair on that raise from this guy really means I beat absolutely nothing. He's got to have, he doesn't have kings because he would have raised pre-flop. He doesn't have nines, he'd have folded, but he could have 5, 6. He could have a set of 7s, a set of 8s. He could even have king 8. I don't think he would have king 9, but he could have gotten sticky with a king. I doubt it, though. I told him, you got 5, 6. So I asked him if he would show, and he said he would show if I showed first. So I showed my 2 pair. He showed his 5, 6. He had the straight. Good thing for me, because if I call that bet, I'm definitely calling the river also, and it would have cost me over $1,000. So a good fold there. Even though in reality it was a pretty easy fold. Let's see, so I got down to about $900. I'd bought in for 15. A new guy came to the table, and he had given me some money on some draws, so I was back up to maybe $11.50 when this hand happened. So I'm on the button with pocket jacks. 4 limpers to me, and I made a bad raise. I raised to 50. This should be much, much larger, but I made a mistake. Anyhow, it ends up being 3 of us going to the flop, including my friend who had missed his draws earlier. So the flop came 5, 4, 10. Both players checked to me. I bet 150, and Spewy calls, and the other guy folds. The turn is the 3 of spades. He checks to me. There's 485 in the pot. I have 700. I don't want to mess around. I jam it in there, and he thinks for just a second and call. The river was a 2 of clubs, which is a scary card. An ace gets there, a 6 gets there, but he ended up having king 10. He had top pair with second nut kicker. So anyhow, I won a nice pot there, doubled up back over starting stack, so I went to 2,100 or so. So I played for about 7 hours of 5-10. Ended up with a net profit of $90 after 7 hours. That was pretty funny. At least I won. Winnie, 2 nights in a row, huh, Billy?
Yep.
Little Winnie starry. Let's make it WinStar, okay? WinStar. So we're playing 2-5, and one of the early hands that I got pocket deuces under the gun. I limped. The big stack to my left makes it 25. The tight player on the button calls, and both of the blinds fold. The flop comes 3 of spades, 6 of spades, 2 of hearts. I check. The big stack pre-flop raiser bets 75. Tidy on the button calls, and then I raise to 200. The big stack thinks for a minute. He calls. Tidy then shoves all in, for 290. I tried to re-raise. I didn't realize that it was a wooden legal raise, so I ended up making the call for 290. But I already showed that I was going to shove all in, and then the big stack called the 290. The turn was the 4 of diamonds. I shoved. The big stack says, "I know you have a set," and he folds. So I ended up getting lucky. The river was the 5, and the tidy had pocket 3s for set over set. We ended up getting a straight, and we chopped the money from the big stack. So the next interesting hands, I have king of spades, jack of diamonds under the gun. I decided to limp. There was another limper, and then an average player who didn't have a big stack. I think he had like 290. Makes it 25. Tidy calls, I call, and the other pre-flop limper calls. So there's 4 of us to a flop. So the flop comes king, jack, 10. I check. The other limper checked. Pre-flop raiser makes it 50. Tidy folds. I raise to 130. The other limper folds. 130. And Tidy says, "Gosh, I'm so sick of getting raised, but I fold." And he folded, and he said, "You had 2 pair, didn't you?" And I told him, "Yes, I did." Okay, so just 2 hands later, I wake up with pocket queens. There's a limper. Our player who was sick of getting raised makes it 20. I call, and the original limper calls. So the flop comes 6-9 deuce. I check, the other limper checks, and the pre-flop raiser bets 75. I decide to shove all in. He doesn't have very much money behind. Other guy folds, and he thinks about it. He turns over pocket 10s to see if that scares me, and he eventually makes the call. The board runs out clean, and I stack that guy off. So I've been doing well. I have about $1,100 bought in for 5, and then I get pocket 10s in the cutoff. A sticky player raises to 20. A good young player calls to 20. I raise to 90. Goes back to the original raiser. He calls, and so does the young player. So there's 3 of us to a flop at $90 each. So the flop came king of hearts, 8 of hearts, 2 of clubs. It checked to me. I decided to check. I had done some of that with ace king, hit a king, and checked. I'd been doing quite a bit of that, flopping the good hand and checking until the turn. I also decided I didn't want to play a big pot with what was second pair at the time. But the turn was a beautiful 10 of spades. So I now have a set of 10s. They both checked to me. I bet 100, a small bet, and they both called. The river was the 3 of diamonds. They both checked to me. I bet 200. In retrospect, I wish I had bet a little bit less, but they both folded. So they must have been on heart draws or something like that. And the last hand I'll go over, I had jack, queen of spades at the cutoff. At this point, I've got a little over 1,400, and Tidy raises at 20 under the gun. A sticky player calls. The young player calls. I call, and both blinds fold. So we've got 4 players to the flop. So the flop is ace of spades, jack of hearts, 10 of clubs. The tight player checks. Sticky bets 40. Young player folds. I decide to make the call. I've got pair. I've got a gutter ball, backdoor flush. Tight player folds. The turn is the jack of diamonds. He checks to me, and I checked. I knew I was leaving soon, so I wanted to play a little bit trappy to see if I could win a pretty good pot. We'll see what happens. Well, the river is the ace of clubs, about the worst card that could come in the deck. So he bets tiny, $45. Oh, I know that I'm beat, but I made the crying call anyways. And of course, he had like ace 8 or something like that. So way to play a winner into a loser, Mr. Bill. Don't do that. That's not very smart. So I did have a better second night, playing 2-5. I was in for 500, out for 13-10 in just 3 hours, so not so bad. My little son Billy, though, however, did not have such a great night. He was down a little bit. He plays 1-2, got down to about $85 and decided, like I had on a previous hand, I'm just going to win a pot. And he punted his entire stack off with 9-5 of hearts. On a 10-10 deuce board, he decided to bluff and the guy had pocket aces, so oopsie poo. Anyhow, thrilled to death to get back to playing more poker this week, since I didn't get to play hardly at all last week. 17 hours I played this week. For me, that's quite a bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed the more poker and the hand analysis, and we will see you next week. Bye, guys.